بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Last week we began 12 types of sins that need to be fully removed in order for repentance to actually occur, and that these types of sins are by nature they continue to I guess you could say live in the person's heart unless they are fully taken out. So last week we spoke about kufr and its types and how that works, and today we're gonna talk about the sister of kufr, and that is shirk, right? Associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every shirk is an act of kufr, right? Every shirk is an act of kufr, but not every kufr is an act of shirk. So someone can be a disbeliever without being a mushrik, or someone who associates partners with Allah, like an atheist. An atheist has disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he doesn't worship anyone besides him. The same thing with, for example, someone who just says, I believe there's one God, but I don't think that we need organized religion. They have disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't worship anything besides him. And likewise, deists, those who believe in God's existence, but that God created the universe and let it be. There is no such thing as organized religion. Right? So those are all forms of kufr, but not shirk. But anyone who commits an act of shirk has committed an act of kufr. So like kufr, shirk has two levels, shirk akbar and shirk asghar, and the greater shirk and the lesser shirk. And like kufr, they have the same consequences. Greater shirk expels a person from the religion, whereas lesser shirk does not. And starting with the greater form of shirk, examples of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive the one who commits an act of shirk, but forgives or is forgiving for anything, or can forgive anything below that. So just to clarify this is referring to the Day of Judgment, meaning anyone who meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the state of shirk or worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah does not forgive that sin. This is assuming also that the person has received the message, meaning Islam came to them, a messenger has come to them, someone representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's monotheistic faith has come to them and portrayed the message or relayed the message. However, if someone dies without being aware of the religion, the message has not reached them, then they will go through some sort of test on the Day of Judgment, which will indicate where they will be. Another example is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, تَاللَّهِ إِن كُنَّا لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ إِذْ نُسَوِّيكُم بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, we were in great misguidance because we used to talking to those that they used to worship, because we used to make you equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this verse indicates the meaning of shirk, really. When they say إِذْ نُسَوِّيكُم بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, we used to make you equals to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the definition of shirk, this greater form of shirk, is صَرْفْ مَا يَخْتَصُّ بِاللَّهِ إِلَى غَيْرِ اللَّهِ, giving that which is exclusive to Allah, or attributing that which is exclusive to Allah to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So this is a very important definition because it helps navigate those gray areas where some people, if they don't know this definition, they will consider an act to be an act of shirk or not an act of shirk. Right? So unpacking this definition, giving or attributing to other than Allah that which is exclusive to Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certain traits, certain abilities that are exclusive to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that exclusivity we get from the Quran and Hadith. Meaning, in order to attribute in order to consider something exclusive to Allah, we need to have some sort of evidence that indicates that. So you find that throughout the Quran, such as knowledge of the unseen. Alimul ghaib فَلَا يُظْهِرُ عَلَى غَيْبِهِ أَحَدًا. He is the knower of the unseen, and He does not make the unseen known to other than Him. right? إِلَّا مَنِ ارْتَضَى مِنْ رَسُولٍ, except who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses from messengers. So sometimes he will indicate, or I'm sorry, he will reveal to a messenger something that's going to happen in the future. So we have this concept of what's called alamat as-sa'a, the signs of the hour, and most people have some sort of understanding of that. There are many hadith, plenty of hadith, which prophesy certain events in the future, right? Such as one of the most popular ones is the naked Bedouins or the barefoot Bedouins will start competing in building skyscrapers. Okay. We all know what this is referring to now, right? We all know what this is referring to. In the Gulf and their competition now, Jeddah wants to build the highest skyscraper after Burj Khalifa in the Emirates, right? So that is prophesizing a future event, the prophecy of the Antichrist, the return of Jesus, and all that, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the unseen is exclusive to Him, and from among His messengers He will reveal some of that. So anyone who comes and claims that they know the unseen, or they know the future, what's going to happen in the future, is equating themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these psychics and these palm readers and whatnot, they say, okay, this is going to happen to you in the future, and this is what's coming, and be careful of this. All of this is an act of shirk. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us, whoever goes to a fortune teller or a sorcerer, and they believe in what they say, then they have disbelieved in what I have been sent with. Why? Because it is contrary or contradicting a clear verse in the Quran. The unseen is only known by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Likewise, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who allows people into paradise, and it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who admits people into the hellfire. So anyone who claims that someone else has the ability to do that, right, they have associated that thing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that individual with Allah. So sometimes you have these faiths or these strands or these fringes of the faith, where part of their belief is that this sheikh, the sheikh so-and-so, right, has the ability to let you into paradise. He'll be giving you the keys to paradise. That is an act of shirk. Why? Because that is exclusive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another example is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the ultimate authority. So anyone who claims there's an authority that is equivalent to Allah, or is outside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is not, under the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they have committed an act of shirk. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that among people are those who make equivalents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They love them the way they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does this mean? So if you look at shirk, this greater form of shirk, its reality, the reality of this shirk is that you are lessening from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection. You are making Allah, or that person is making Allah imperfect, right? Or they are taking something and making it equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in of itself is reducing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because to say something is equal to Allah, whatever it is, or whoever it is, we know that that thing is imperfect. So to say that it's equal to Allah, or to treat it in a way that is equal to Allah, even in one facet, right, is as if they are taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and limiting His abilities as well. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, among mankind are those who will make equals to Allah, right? They'll take equals to Allah. They love them the way they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is that? Because they believe that they have abilities equivalent to Allah. And this results in emotional attachments to these entities that cause a person to put their tawakkul on it, or in it, and put their fear and their hope in it, and all these emotions that we've been talking about, right? So when a person evaluates themselves, if you remember that station of Iman, self-evaluation, right, they'll start evaluating themselves based on what this entity thinks of them, not just what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks of them, right? Also, the love will be in them. If they believe that this entity has the ability to benefit them or harm them, right, that's where the attachment comes from, as we'll get to momentarily. So what's happening here is that when a person puts false beliefs or false abilities to an entity, right, it starts affecting their emotional attachment to it. Right? And that's what causes that shirk. And that's what causes kind of, you're putting Allah, the person is putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as, secondary or equal to something else, and this is a big problem, right? As we will get to inshallah when we talk about how shirk or why shirk is an act of injustice. And another important verse in this regard is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلِ ادْعُوا الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ لَا يَمْلِكُونَ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَلَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَا لَهُمْ فِيهِمَا مِنْ شِرْكٍ وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ وَلَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ. In these two verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents to us the reasons why shirk is so despised and such a great injustice. And it's giving us certain forms. Anyone who commits an act of shirk is doing one of the following to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or making one of the following claims, and that is لا يملكون مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying those that you are associating with and those that you are calling upon besides Allah, they do not own even an atom's worth of the world or the existence that you see. They don't own any of that. So someone who worships other than Allah, it could be that they claim that this entity owns part of the universe independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So if you can imagine, this your home, and you have the fence and you know where the borders are for your home, this is your land, right? Now if someone were to come and claim, say, you see this tile right here, any tile, 1 foot by 1 foot tile, right? They come and say, this is my land. What's the reaction? Heck no. It's not your land, right? It's not. That's a false claim. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying they don't even own just 1%. Not even 1%, an atom's worth. They don't own that. And anyone who claims that they own it or ascribes that ownership to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what they are saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have full authority over His creation. That's problematic. So going back to the example of that tile, right? If someone comes and claims that tile, you as the owner of that home or that land, you will do what it takes to expel them from that land, from that place. No, that's not going to happen. Now, if you are unable to do that, that is an indication of your own weakness, that you don't have the ability to do that. And although that could happen technically to us, but that's a branch of our imperfection. So if this person or this entity or these people are claiming that this entity owns this atom, right? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not have the ability to expel that person and get his ownership back? So it's very problematic. Claiming that there are gods, deities besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates that these deities own part of the kingdom or part of the creation independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is completely unjust in terms of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Allah is perfect. Part of His perfection is that He owns everything. Everything's under His authority, right? تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكِ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Blessed is the one who owns the kingdom, right? Or the kingdom is in His hand, and He is able to do all things. So that's one problem. The second category which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to is وَمَا لَهُمْ فِيهِمَا مِنْ شِرْكٍ, and He has no associates or partners in that. So to give an example, people open businesses. They'll open a company, and they don't have enough money to open it by themselves. They need a partner, right? And these two partners are equal in terms of their ownership and their authority. So does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have a partner in this kingdom, right? Well, those who say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does have a partner, what are they really saying? It goes back to the example. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unable to run the kingdom by Himself? Because an owner of a company might need a partner because they are incapable of financing it themselves or running it themselves, right? So to claim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or something is an equal to Allah or something is a partner to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the creation is indicating that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is incompetent to take care of the creation or to manage it on His own. So He needs partners to help Him out in that, right? Or that there's an equal authority to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that they are independent of Allah, but now they have the same rights over the kingdom or a part of the kingdom with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's also an indication or claim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is imperfect. وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ, and he does not have a helper, right? In other words, sometimes what they say is, these pagans, what they'll say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, he is the ultimate authority, he owns everything. However, he has these intermediaries, right, shufa'a, that these middlemen, as they're claimed. So it's not about taking away from Allah's authority or believing that these entities own something, but rather these entities take our, for example, supplication, our requests to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they help him out in running his affairs, or they help him out running the universe. And to give an example of that, when you look at a country, any country, even at the city or local level, there's a system. There's a hierarchy of power. You have the president, and under the president, right, you have a cabinet, and you have ministers. Each one is responsible for a sector of the country or society, right? Why does he need a cabinet? Because he's unable to do everything by himself, right? So he needs these helpers, because the president does not know everything that's going on. So he needs people to run those affairs and send the information to him. He's unable to answer all requests by himself. He can't take every appointment. He can't do all that, right? So he needs these helpers to help him, answer the requests and meet people, etc., and run the affairs. So it all goes back to the president's inability to do everything by himself. Now, can we claim the same thing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course not. Allah is capable of doing all things. As the Prophet ﷺ tells us, that if every single human being and jinn, from the day they were created, from the first creation of the father of each, right, until the day of judgment, were to all gather on one plane and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what they want, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to answer them all, right, then that would not take from his kingdom one bit, right? So what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us is that not only does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have the ability to answer our requests, he has the ability to process them as well. If all of us were to start making dua at once, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of dealing with them all, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like these kings. He's not like these entities who are imperfect and therefore they need helpers. So those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be claiming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is incapable of running all the affairs, so he needs these helpers, right? And then the fourth category is وَلَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ. And intercession does not, no one can benefit from intercession with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except those he permits. So another form of shirk is that the pagans of Mecca, for example, they fell into this, is they believe that they cannot directly address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they're too sinful. They're not pure enough to address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so they need these pious people, right, or who were once pious people who now they've made into idols and superficial entities. They need them to intercede for them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So for example, in our ethnic countries, this happens quite a bit, right? I need this thing done, this government document done, and I know they're going to give me problems and whatnot. I have the person might have some fines on them, and just it's a big mess. So what do? I know so-and-so who's close to the minister, right? So I'm going to go and ask him for that favor and have him talk to the minister, right? Now the minister, he needs his group, right? He needs people loyal to him. And therefore, part of building that loyalty is he does favors for people, and people will do favors for him. This is foreign politics, really. King A and King B, right? Independent, they each know that they can be overrun by their enemies. Therefore, they build an alliance, right? We need each other. So let's go ahead and build an alliance. Now, part of building that relationship and building that loyalty to one another is they'll do favors for one another, right? So King B, right, goes to King A and says, you know what, I have this guy who's really important to me. He's looking for a job. Can you give him a job? So King A, not that he needs him, but he needs King B. And he wants to build that relationship. He said, yeah, I'll do that favor for you. But why is he doing that favor? Because he needs that other person, right? So King B can leverage the decision of King A. Why? Because King A needs King B. So this form of shirk of intercession, is that they believe that these entities have this type of leverage with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are pious in of themselves, and therefore they can influence the decisions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But we all know that's complete falsity, right? It's nonsense. No one can influence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decision. No one has that type of power over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, what's the point of these things? I don't need someone to intercede on your behalf in order for me to communicate with you. I don't need these entities to come and say, can you take an appointment with so-and-so? Anyone who calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how pious or how mischievous of a person they are, then they have equal access to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because He is Allah. He's the King of Kings. He's not just a human king, right? No one can influence His decisions, and therefore intercession does not occur except by His permission, even on the Day of Judgment, even with the Prophet ﷺ. Meaning, on the Day of Judgment, no one can go up to Allah and say, oh Allah, allow me to intercede for so-and-so. No one says a word, except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith, an authentic hadith, in the very long hadith in which humans will go to each prophet and say, intercede for us and so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the judgment. Right? They start off with Adam ﷺ. And Adam says, I disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ate from the tree. I'm worried about myself, go to Nuh ﷺ. So human beings will go to Nuh. Now keep in mind that they've been waiting on this plane on the Day of Judgment for a long time. They're restless now. They just wanted to get over with, right? So they go to Nuh ﷺ. Remember, these are the most pious people. So why are they going to these people? Thinking that, they can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is going to answer them. They go to Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. They said, oh Nuh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that you are a abd shakur. You are a grateful servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Intercede for us. And Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam will say, I made dua against my people. I'm worried about myself. Go to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So humanity will go to Ibrahim. Say, Ibrahim, you are the Khalil of Allah. You are the close friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam will say, I said 3 lies. Right? Of course, these aren't real, they're white lies. We wouldn't consider them to be lies. Or he was justified in doing saying what he said. So say, I'm worried about myself. Go to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And they go to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And they say, oh Musa, you are the one Allah spoke to directly without a messenger to speak on your behalf. Right? Intercede for us. So Musa will say, I killed that individual. It was an accident, right? So I'm worried about myself. Go to Isa. We go to Jesus, and Jesus will say, that's not for me. He won't say a sin. And the scholars, they kind of contemplated, why didn't he say anything? Is he sinless? That's possible. It could also be possible that he still hasn't died, so it is inappropriate to reveal a mistake that he's done. So he'll say, that's not for me. Go to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So humanity will go to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and the Prophet ﷺ will say, that is for me. This is for me. This is my responsibility. And he tells us, the Prophet ﷺ, that every prophet was given one dua that was automatically accepted. Right? And this is a major, perhaps, world-changing type of dua. The Prophet ﷺ said, all the prophets made their dua except me. I'm saving it for my ummah on the Day of Judgment. So he says, this is for me. So what will he do? He'll say, oh Allah, let's get this thing going. What he does is the following. He says, I will prostrate to Allah, and I will praise Him with praises I don't know right now. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, Ya Muhammad, irfa' ra'sak, is'al tu'ata, ishfa' tushaffa' lak. Right? He will continue to praise Allah until Allah tells him, get up, ask and you will be given, intercede and your intercession will be accepted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who tells them, go ahead. The Prophet didn't say, oh Allah, let me intercede. And that's how it works. And this is throughout the Quran. If anyone intercedes for someone else, it is Allah saying, oh, so-and-so, intercede for so-and-so. That's how it works. Because no one has that leverage over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one. It is Allah who chooses who goes to paradise. Of course, He tells us who He chooses who goes to paradise. And He is the one who chooses who goes to hellfire. So, when you look at shirk, in all of its categories and forms, it all goes back to taking away or believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not perfect. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this 3 times in the Quran, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. And they did not appraise Allah with due appraisal, or with proper appraisal. And this is where all shirk, kufr, and innovations begin. Well, maybe not innovations, but shirk and kufr, all forms of disbelief are rooted in having a false perception or an incomplete understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And this is exactly what Ibrahim ﷺ tells his people. فَمَا ظَنُّكُمْ بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. What is your opinion of the Lord of the universe? And then the verse stops. Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayh, elaborating on this verse, he says, what the verse is saying, فَمَا ظَنُّكُمْ بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ حَتَّى اتَّخَذْتُم مِّن دُونِهِ عِبَادٍ. Right? He's saying, what is your opinion of Allah that you felt the need to worship other than Him? Is Allah incapable of answering all your requests that you need other people to answer your requests? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, does He not hear your request so you have to go and ask someone else? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala incompetent, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, in taking care of you that you needed other entities to take care of you? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala incapable of helping you financially that you needed this deity, right? And to this deity who is assumed to help in that regard, money. Because they had all these idols, right? And each idol had a specific role. This one's for love, this one's for children, this one's for health, this one's for wealth. Is Allah incapable of giving you that you needed these entities? So any form of shirk or disbelief always goes back to, right, an incomplete understanding of Allah or an imperfect understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why shirk is so bad. And that's why it's, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Shirk is the greatest injustice. Right? Now, moving forward, this is a very interesting concept. Because if you were to go to the average, a Western individual and say worshiping other than God is a great injustice, it would completely draw a blank. What do you mean? Injustice to God, how does that work? Right? Why is that? Because the term injustice is defined to be exclusive to social or political issues. Injustice is only towards someone else or to someone else or political. Can you be unjust to yourself? No, I'm talking about in terms of secular sciences. Even in psychology, right? Can you do an act of injustice to yourself? As per their definition. Right? Can you do an act of injustice to yourself, right? That's why some people are pushing to legalize euthanasia, right? If a person wants to kill themselves, why not? Why not? What's wrong? Because you can't do an act of injustice to yourself, right? Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ, and they did injustice to themselves, right? Another example, can you do injustice to God? According to the secular definition of injustice. God is completely excluded from the conversation. He's outside of it. So when the Quran comes and says, shirk is a great injustice, it just draws question marks, it draws a blank. How can we do an act of injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because the definition that we work with, right, excludes Allah and excludes itself. You have the freedom to do what you want to yourself, as long as you don't harm anyone else. right? Even though there are contradictions here. Because when a person kills themselves, they do harm to their family, right? You know, one lady, her husband killed himself. And she comes to me. She said, look what he did to us, right? And it's as if she wanted him to be in hellfire for the pain that he put them through. Was that not an injustice, right? So the definition is skewed or different, let's say, than the Quranic definition of injustice. Whereas injustice, the word dhulm, means to put something where it doesn't belong. And what's interesting is that the antonym of injustice, of dhulm, is hikmah, wisdom. Because wisdom is putting something where it belongs, right? Of course, adl is also an antonym to it, but it's just interesting how that works. So, in Islam, injustice is not limited to socio-political issues. It also includes the individual. It also includes the theological injustices as well. And therefore, someone who goes around spreading false notions about Allah or fabrications about Allah is considered to be someone who's unjust. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِنْ افترى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Who is more unjust? I challenge you to find someone more unjust than someone who fabricates lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Find someone more unjust than that. Now again, in our paradigm, this just doesn't make sense. No? Right? It just draws these blanks. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ مَنَعَ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ أَن يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ وَسَعَى فِي خَرَابِهَا. And who is more unjust? I challenge you to find someone more unjust than one who prevents people from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the masjid. And they go about trying to destroy the masajid. Right? Who's more unjust than that? Again, this is a place of worship, right? If I prevent someone from worshiping Allah, you know, what's the deal with that? But here the Quran says it's an act of injustice. So how is it an act of injustice? Number one, it's injustice towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah has rights. And I don't say that, you know, meaning that Allah needs to be protected or needs this, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His authority has rights. What's the evidence for that? Is a hadith narrated by Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu an, in which he says the Prophet that he was with the Prophet riding with him on a mount, and he said, "Ya Mu'adh, atadri ma haqqu Allahi ala al-ibad wa ma haqqu al-ibadi ala Allah?" He said, the Prophet asked Mu'adh, said, "O Mu'adh, do you know what Allah's right is over His creation, and what the creation's right is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?" Excuse me. So Mu'adh radiallahu anh said, "Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam." Allah and His Messenger know best. Now Mu'adh knows the answer, right? He knows the answer, but he wants to hear it from the Prophet. And this is part of the etiquettes of student-teacher relationship. If you know something, right, you don't have to answer, because perhaps if you answer, then that kind of concludes the conversation. Whereas if you allow the teacher to answer, maybe he'll add extra information you didn't know about, right? So that's what Mu'adh was hoping for, to hear from the Prophet ﷺ and maybe give him more information than he was expecting. So he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, the right of Allah over His creation is that they worship Him alone and they don't associate partners with Him. That is Allah's right, Tawheed. Right? And the right of the creation, if they do that, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish them. That is it. So we can do injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, I don't mean that it harms Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that Allah needs protection through what we call human rights or civil rights. That's not what I mean. But if you look at the definition of dhulm, it's putting something where it doesn't belong. And to worship other than Allah, as we mentioned throughout this lecture, is putting something where it doesn't belong and taking away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection. Allah refuses to be mocked, right? He refuses to let people ridicule Him and fabricate lies about Him. Now, He might give them some time to rethink and repent and whatnot, but sooner or later He will make clear to all of mankind who He is, subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is part of His perfection. He is the King of Kings. It is an act of injustice when someone does shirk. It's injustice to the self as well, right? How so? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam making a dua in towards the end of Surah Ibrahim, says, رَبِّ اجْعَلْ هَذَا الْبَلَدَ آمِنًا وَاجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامَ رَبِّ إِنَّهُنَّ أَضْلَلْنَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ. Ibrahim والسلام, while in Mecca establishing the Kaaba, he makes a dua. He says, my Lord, make this city a safe city. Anyone who goes there feels safe, and that's the reality. That's how it is. That's a feeling. Anyone who's gone and done Umrah, they know that being in that city has this blessed feeling, and this feeling of safety and security. SubhanAllah. That is part of, or that is from the dua of Ibrahim والسلام. And he says, keep idols away from us, or keep the worship of idols away from us. Put it on another side. So we don't want anything to do with that. Why? He says, my Lord, because they have misguided many people, right? So worshiping other than Allah misguides the person. And I've spoken about this before, but just because we're on topic, we can reiterate what I've said before, and that is, when a person worships other than Allah, right, there has to be an emotional attachment to that thing, or else it's not worship. By definition, worship is part of, the meaning of worship is to submit. You are submitting to that thing, and that submission tends to manifest itself in emotions, and then through those emotions it becomes physical actions. So when we prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're not just prostrating randomly. As Malcolm X said, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, when I accepted Islam and the moment came to prostrate to Allah, right? He said, I knew that as soon as I do that, I can't go back. Everything is going to change then. Why? Because it's coming from the heart. Who here would prostrate even to their parents? We wouldn't. It's not happening. As much as we love you, or your children, or your spouse, right? As much as we love you, your love isn't that level. But when we prostrate to Allah, where is that coming from? The heart. It is coming from the submission to Him that is built through the love of Allah, acknowledging His authority, His ability, the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Believing in what He said, that there is judgment day, and there is paradise, and there is hellfire, and there are consequences for your actions. There's accountability, and there's reward, right? That's where it's coming from. Now, every time we prostrate, those feelings might not be aroused, right? And that's kind of limiting what we gain from it. And that's something we need to get in the habit of doing. When we prostrate, right, we need to make sure that these emotions are coming out. When I prostrate, your heart should be prostrating before your head prostrates. Before your forehead reaches the ground, your heart should be prostrating already, because that's where it's coming. That's the source, right? So the more we know of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we know about Allah, the more we experience His qada and qadar, His decree in our lives specifically, and how He takes care of us, and how He's made ways for us, and how He's gotten us out of hardships, right? The more we see that and experience it, the more of an emotional attachment that develops with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But all of that goes back to what? Seeing His perfection, acknowledging His perfection. When a person strongly believes that Allah is our financial provider, right? And all these, for example, your job or your spouse or whoever it may be, right? That they are just a means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put for you, but it's Allah who's providing me, right? When we have that type of acknowledgement and that type of attachment, I don't need anyone else. If this job is going to sway me away from Allah, well, Allah is the one who's providing me. I don't need it. If I'm not getting money from here, it's somewhere else, because Allah is the provider. And this is especially important once you get into religious business or religious institutions and whatnot, because religion has a lot of impact on society, and politicians want a piece of that, right? So they try and influence. But if my belief is that my provisions are from Allah, not from this political leader, I don't need to be swayed. I'm not going to be swayed. If I believe that protection is from Allah, benefit and harm is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm not going to sway or be affected by fear-mongering or by persuasion or by desires by other people, by other entities. Here, I'll give you some money and just say this for us. It's not going to happen, right? Allah is the one who protects me, Allah is the one who provides me. But when we start worshipping other than Allah, those emotions are put in these entities. But as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says throughout the Quran, so many times, وَلَا يَمْلِكُونَ in the beginning of Surah Al-Furqan, تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. Anyways, let's keep things short. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says throughout the Quran, these things don't benefit you, nor can they harm you. So why are you worshipping them? Why do we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Be real, right? Because there are certain gains that we're looking for and certain fears that we're trying to protect ourselves from. That's the reality. But these entities, they don't benefit nor do they harm. So they're placing their emotions, their attachment to something that does not benefit them, right? And that's why Yusuf ﷺ says, "لا تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان." You and your fathers are worshiping nothing more than names, fairy tales, fables. This idea that this idol right here has certain supernatural abilities is completely false. There is no evidence to support that. There's no way you can prove that. Rather, what you are worshiping is a name and a story that you attach to that name. That's all it is. And you can see how harmful it will be, or it could be, when a person's attached to something that's nothing more than a name, a fairy tale. Like the boogie, how parents try to scare their kids with, the boogeyman and whatnot, right? Don't go outside late at night. There's some things that are running around, right? And it creates this emotional attachment. Sometimes it can become traumatic. It's harmful for the individual to be attached to something that does not benefit them. Or in fact, it just harms them. So this is why shirk is an act of injustice to the self. The person's harming themselves by becoming attached, dependent on stuff that's not even real, right? And imagine if later on they find out that all of this is nonsense. The hurt and all that they spent. It's really interesting when you talk to people who have been in paganistic traditions and whatnot. In pagan traditions, you have to sacrifice for the god and you serve the god, right? This idol, you serve it food and whatnot. And you carry out all these tasks for it. And you get nothing in return. What's the point? Right? We as human beings, we need a God who provides us, not we provide that God. What kind of a God needs us to provide him? How silly is that? We're the ones who need, not God. If a God needs, that's not a God worthy of worshiping. You can take care of yourself then, right? But we are the ones in need, and we need a God who is self-sufficient, perfect in of himself, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And the third way shirk is an act of injustice is it's an act of injustice towards mankind, towards others. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا لَقَدْ جِئْتُمْ شَيْئًا إِدًّا تَكَادُ السَّمَاوَاتُ يَتَفَطَّرْنَ مِنْهُ وَتَنْشَقُّ الْأَرْضُ وَتَخِرُّ الْجِبَالُ هَدًّا أَنْ دَعُوا لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدًا. SubhanAllah. These are powerful verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they have taken besides him a child, or they have claimed that Allah, Ar-Rahman, has taken a child. Indeed, they have come with something atrocious. It's as if the heavens are going to explode because of what they say. And the earth is going to shatter. And the mountains are going to, fall apart because they claim that God has a child, right? What does that mean? So confusing to people in our times, right? When we talk about this, we need to take a step back and remember why the universe was created in the first place. And that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, when someone claims the exact opposite of that, it's as if they are shaking the foundations this universe was built off of. And they're causing a lot of chaos, and they're harming the infrastructure of the universe, and how that affects all of mankind. When a person goes about spreading these false beliefs, or promoting atheism, or promoting, lifestyles that excludes God from their daily routines, look at how they are harming that individual. Right? How it harms the self. Do all of this. Look at the slogans. It's all these major companies, their mottos always have something to do with be yourself. right? Freedom. Express yourself. Always. Disney movies. When it's the girl's time to sing, what are they singing about? I will not be silent, right? I will express myself and whatnot. That in of itself is not problematic, right? But it's the type of lifestyle that they are promoting, that it's a lifestyle that excludes God, is creating a lot of problems. They are taking life and making it depend on yourself, and you need to achieve happiness. If you are not happy, it's because you failed to achieve happiness, right? Whereas the Islamic message is happiness is from Allah, ask it from Him. Happiness is when you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Happiness comes when you feel dependent on a entity that is capable of taking care of you. But the Western idea, the Western way of life is very problematic. And we see the results of that. We see it clearly, right? And there's nothing being done to challenge that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَوَيْلٌ لِلْكَافِرِينَ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَحِبُّونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا عَلَى الْآخِرَةِ وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَيَبْغُونَهَا عِوَجًا. And, woe to the disbelievers, those who prefer or love this life over the next one. And that's one of the results of disbelief. They get people attached to this life instead of the next life. And that's harmful for the individual, right? Because if you don't have this life, you fail to achieve the wonders and the pleasures of this life, it's as if you have lost everything, right? Like all these YouTube channels that's about, these kids and having fun all the time, video after video, they're having adventures, unpacking toys, buying toys and whatnot. Anyone who watches this, they think that their life is literally day in, day out excitement, when that's not really the reality. They're getting people attached to this life. And these companies love it. These major companies love it. Why? Because now the goal is, I need your life to serve my life. It's no longer, I need a little bit of money, I want to sell you this product. No, I want your life, right? And all your actions to serve me. And this is a form of enslavement, really. I need to get you in these webs, this whole new payment strategy. Buy a car, no interest for 60 months, make payments. By the time the 5 years are done, hey, you know what? I want to get a new car. You can still make payments and whatnot. So there's nothing haram with this, right? There's nothing morally controversial in this in terms of this type of business, right? But look at the idea. I need you to constantly give me payments so that you're constantly catering to me, right? Whereas when a person is dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and believe that all this is coming from Allah, it breaks those shackles. It's Allah alone. No one can influence me. The only one who influences me, who arouses my emotions, right? Who I need is Allah. And that brings me comfort because I know Allah doesn't need anything from me. So anything He does is for my betterment, not His. Whereas any other person, if they are doing a favor for you, the assumption is what? They're waiting for a favor back, right? That's how we humans deal with each other. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَدْعُو مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُ وَمَا لَا يَنْفَعُ ذَلِكَ هُوَ الضَّلَالُ الْبَعِيدُ يَدْعُو لَمَنْ ضَرُّهُ أَقْرَبُ مِن نَفْعِهِ لَبِئْسَ الْمَوْلَى وَلَبِئْسَ الْعَشِيرُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they call upon those who cannot benefit them or harm them. Indeed, that is a great misguidance. They invoke that those whose harm is closer to them than their benefit. لَبِئْسَ الْمَوْلَى. What an evil companion and what an evil person to be close to. And that's reality. Humans. That's how we are. Now, that's just human nature. We cannot. That's not the problem. The problem is when we exclude Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we become dependent on such relationships. And that brings us a lot of stress and a lot of harm. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Him not needing anything from us, means that we can have that sakina, that tuma'nina, that tranquility, that He will always do for us what's in our best interest, whether we perceive that or not. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help our hearts become attached to Him. Inshallah, next week we'll do the lesser forms of shirk, which are kind of offshoots of these greater forms of shirk. And that's an important session. So inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and to benefit us from what we have learned today. وجزاكم الله خير وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.